Hey everybody, Q here with another China Gold Oil weekly market update for the week ending February 8th, 2013. Looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, ticker symbol DJIND, we can see that last week was a consolidation. We pretty much stuck right on and under that 14,000 level. And it's very healthy movement. You can see what it's doing is actually separating from this upper envelope and getting closer to the 50-day moving average. So it's getting closer to the center of these as it consolidates, and you can see here we got pretty close. We moved up really quickly these few days here, and we got really close to this upper envelope. So as it got close to that, it became uncomfortable. It started recognizing that it was growing too quickly, and so we started leveling off. For about the past week and a half roughly, we've been leveling off and consolidating, and that's very healthy movement. If anything, if I had to make a guess, I would say there's a higher probability that it will come down and back off this price before it continues to go up. Of course, time will always tell, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. Either a further consolidation at the 14,000 level, or possibly coming off of that for a few days and getting closer to this 50-day moving average. And depending on how strong the trend is, if it's a strong trend, it won't touch the 50-day moving average. It'll continue to go up, kind of like it did back here. It's kind of a rough example. But that will tell, and that's kind of what I'm looking for in the future, is a further consolidation or possibly coming down off the 14,000 and seeing how close we get to the 50-day moving average. Okay, now we'll check out the SPX. Alright, looking at the SPX, we can see that it's more or less the same. Further consolidation last week, which is good. However, at the end of the week, Thursday and Friday, those two candlestick bars are indications to me that there is a stronger chance that this might continue to go up, unlike the Dow. And the two markets are extremely close to each other, so that'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out, which one pulls what in what direction. But the reason I say that about these two final bars, Thursday and Friday, and they're very weak. It's a very weak signal. So what I'm looking at here is the Dragonfly Doji on Thursday. We opened up high at the more or less the high of the day, tested lower prices, and they did not last, and we came back up throughout the day and closed more or less where we opened, and that's a Dragonfly Doji. And then the next bar, the Friday's bar, we actually opened roughly the same level as Thursday's open and close, but then we went up and we continued to go up, and we closed at the high for the week. So that tells me that this will continue its uptrend. There's a higher probability that the uptrend here in the SPX will continue. Probably very mild. It probably won't go up very strongly this following week, but there's a higher probability that it will go up than staying straight or going down. Of course, we shall see how it plays out with the Dow and things like that. Okay, now let's check out gold. Alright, looking at the GLD. Interesting price movement. It's actually quite telling. Thursday's and Friday's price action is telling to me. They're kind of minor, but I'm going to call them significant, especially because of this past week and a half of action that we've had, just bouncing off of this 50 and 200 day, and also back here we bounced off the 50 and 200 day, and back here we did. So we just haven't been able to make it through the 50 and 200 day moving average with gold. So on Thursday's price action, we opened low. Throughout the day the price went up and actually interacted with the 50 and the 200 day moving average, and then the price did not last up there, so it came back down throughout the day, and we closed a little above where we opened, but it was still down at the lows of the day, more or less. So the other things I'm looking for with these bars is it's all the price action takes place below the 50 and the 200 day moving average. We can't get above there. This is indicating to me that it's going to come down ultimately, probably pretty soon, probably within the next week or two. I see gold dropping, and stop messing around with these 50 and 200 day moving averages. Let's see what silver says. Okay, now we're looking at something. These last 2 days of trading, Thursday and Friday, are very telling to me. Even though they're small, that does take away from their power. It's pretty telling price action for me right now, because it's interacting with the 50 and the 200 day moving average. And what happened on Thursday, we opened below those two averages. The price action throughout the day went up almost hit the 31 level, but it went up through the 50 and the 200-day moving average. And then throughout the day, the prices came back down and closed below the 50 and the 200-day. So that's very telling to me. So what we do is wait for a confirmation the following day. What happened the following day, Friday, is that we opened below. Throughout the day, the price action went up and a little bit above the 50 and the 200-day moving average, and then throughout the day it came back down and closed more or less at the lows, below the 200-day moving average, pretty much right where we opened, more or less. So that's what I'm looking at. The open and the close were below the 200-day moving average and the 50-day moving average, and throughout the day the price action did come up and interact with them and then came back down off of them throughout the day. So those two, Thursday and Friday, the open and the close below the 50 and the 200-day, and also the price action moving up through it throughout the day, tells me that we're headed for some down movement in silver. I would not be surprised at all if this coming week sometime, it might not be Monday or Tuesday, but I would say probably this coming week sometime, we're going to come down off of this 50-day and 200-day, and silver's heading down, and that probably means gold is too. Strong probability on that. Of course, it's not certain, but it's a strong probability. Okay, away from metals, let's go to something more liquid. Let's check out oil. And oil is showing us very healthy price movement. I really like this. You can see we started this uptrend and pretty much stuck to the upper envelope. Last week and a half roughly we came off it and started consolidating, a lot like the markets, and this is a more pronounced example of what the markets are going through also, because we're actually on the envelope, whereas with the markets they didn't actually touch it, they just came close. So we were on the upper envelope, then we started to consolidate a little bit, and you can see again we separated from the upper envelope and we got closer to the 50 and the 200-day moving average. What I'm looking for this coming week with oil is that I see the price action coming down a little bit and interacting with the 50 and the 200-day moving average. Somehow it's going to do something with those. If it's a strong uptrend, it might pop off it before it actually comes down to touch it. If it's a strong, healthy consolidation, it will actually touch the 50 and the 200-day before it moves up again. But the price action will show us what it does, and it should be an interesting week for oil. I'm looking forward to this one. But I do see it again coming down a little bit, interacting with the 50 and the 200-day just above the 22 level, and then going up again, but we'll see what the interaction tells us. And up next is the JJG for grains. Okay, warning alert for grains. This is not a healthy chart for up signals. Do not buy grains is my suggestion right now. You can see we've been playing around with the 50 and the 200-day moving average. Came down off it a little bit, retested it recently, and you can see what happened when we retested it. We've been coming down off it hard, and this looks like one of those waterfalls to me. I see probably Monday or Tuesday, early this week, the price is probably going to come down to the 52 or below. I see it interacting, maybe by Wednesday, it'll interact with this lower envelope that I use just below the 52 level. So look for prices just below the 52 level before we stop dropping on these grains. This coming week, that's my strong prediction. And now we will hop over to some Chinese markets and see how those are doing. Okay, looking at the FXI for China. So let's take a look at this. This again was irrational exuberance, so it has to reset. So it came down and it reset right at the envelope, and we were still sticking on the envelope in the upslope, and then we started to separate from it a little bit. And this first separation, we did not actually come down to hit the 50-day moving average. Tried to continue its uptrend along the same slope as this upper envelope, and that didn't last. So it did actually come down ultimately to meet the 50-day moving average. And what we can see here is on Thursday, all the price action was below the 50-day moving average, and on Friday we opened below the 50-day, slight price action up, and actually closed at more or less the highs of the day, which is probably right barely above the 50-day moving average. So this tells me there's a strong potential that this coming week we will trade above the 50-day moving average, above the $40 range, and possibly stay up there. There's a high probability that we'll stay up above the 50-day moving average in the coming week. But the price action, like on Monday and Tuesday, will be very telling, because we'll see how the price action interacts with this 50-day moving average. Okay, now let's check out the EWH. And the EWH actually gives us a stronger signal that the markets are going to continue up on this upslope, on this uptrend. But we will most likely trade above the 50-day moving average. I would say above this $20 level, because this was a strong trade on Friday, a strong positive trade. So that's what I'm looking for in the future. Let's see how our friend the China consumer is faring. Alright, looking at the China consumer, it's been consolidating for a while, but it really hasn't gone anywhere, really from 1550 down to about 15, which is not a huge drop. It's still an uptrend, and especially considering what these last 2 trading days say. Let's see, on Thursday we opened up at about the 50-day moving average. Throughout the day the price came down and actually went back up again throughout the day, and we closed just under where we opened. But we did more or less stick to that 50-day moving average. When we came down off it, we went back up to it. Then the following day we opened right above the 50-day moving average, and the price went up throughout the day, and we closed pretty much at the highs of the day. Now, considering that's bouncing off of the 50-day moving average, that is a strong indication to me that there's going to be a continuing uptrend. It will probably stay above the $15 mark at this point, as far as opening and closing prices. It might, come down and interact with the 50. It might do anything, but I see it staying above the $15 mark, or at least above the 50-day moving average in the coming week, and probably continuing this uptrend. That was probably a very healthy consolidation. Now that it touched the 50-day moving average, that was a reset, that was a breath from growth, so that just charges it. And that concludes the China Gold Oil Weekly Market Update for the week ending February 8th, 2013. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.